Hello, friends. In this short clip from the Hal Puthoff interview on the Joe Rogan Podcast, Hal briefly talks about the difficulties in disclosure. And what I mean is that he was tasked to analyze all the possible implications of what would happen if it was revealed to the general public that all of the stuff that we've learned about aliens and UFOs, what would happen if it came out that all that stuff actually was true?
These days, well, suppose we have some kind of disclosure. What are these companies going to do? They've been hiding things, or various parts of the government have been hiding things.
Misappropriating funds, lying to Congress.
So you can see why it's such a big problem at this point.
Well, really thinking about disclosure and the implications of it, all of the lies that they've been telling over all of the decades, hiding everything, would come out. And trust would erode, and people wouldn't trust anything that anybody said anymore. So it's a calculated decision that they've made to not disclose things fully because of the fear of what would happen post-disclosure to their reputations. In this next clip from the Joe Rogan Podcast with Hal Puthoff, Hal talks about Ultraterrestrials NHI, non-human intelligence. Let's see what Hal has to tell us now.
You know, you can go back millennia and see descriptions of exactly what we're talking about today. So as far as where they come from or what they're doing here, I myself have written a paper called Ultraterrestrials, where I try to cover the gamut.
Wow.
And I cover everything, yeah. They could be spacecraft from some other galaxy whipping through here. Or maybe there's some Atlanteans left over from eons ago, and they're just kind of hiding out in the seabed or in some mountain range someplace. Or maybe some ET group showed up here 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and they're hiding out with some bases locally and so on. And, of course, we have a fellow by the name of a professor by the name of Masters who thinks that, well, maybe it's time travelers from the future coming back. And then there's the whole idea, since physicists like to talk about additional dimensions, maybe they come from another. So anyway, then in my Ultraterrestrials paper, I list everyone I can think of and say, we should be exploring all of these. So at this point, I would say we know it's NHI, non-human intelligence, but it's not clear what the source is.
Yeah. How amazing is that? Hal Puthoff. He's 90 years old. He's served many administrations. He's been involved in a lot of top secret projects. And there's a lot of things that he knows that he can't talk about. He also helped form the To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge. There's so much that he's been involved in. And the interesting thing about Hal is that he never wanted to get into this stuff. He wasn't a believer. He didn't go at this with the intent of making money on UFOs and weird stuff. Like, quite the opposite. He wasn't a believer at all. He was completely a skeptic. There were a couple of events that happened early on in his life that really convinced him of how weird things are. There was a psychic named Pat Price. He was part of the Stargate program, and if you do a search for him online, to Pat Price, Stargate program, or just even CIA, you'll see he was one of the most talented and gifted psychics that there were out there. In the podcast, he talks about some interactions that he had with Pat Price. But the fact that right now he's talking about these NHI, these non-human intelligence, he pretty much says it's here. They're here. That's what some of the drones are. That's what some of the UFOs are. There's so much information about it. The Nazca mummies, there's been these weird spheres that have come out recently. So much amazing and wild stuff. And all of it's related and all of it's connected. back again. In this next clip with Hal, he postulates what he thinks the NHI might be. And it's really fascinating.
Maybe at a higher level of classification than I had access to, and maybe it's known, but right now I'd say we don't.
Do you have a suspicion?
Every time this guy coughs, I can't help but think that there are words that he's stifling from coming out, and instead of just speaking immediately, he starts coughing because he has to be very careful about what he says. Because if he says the wrong thing, I'm sure he would be found having had some sort of accident. Especially at 90, it would be easy. What do you think?
I guess my suspicion that it's likely non-human intelligence from some other galaxy or far out in our own galaxy that have come here but some time back, and that there are stations here.
Stations.
One of our remote viewers that was really good came up one day and said, I was looking around and I think I found a UFO base on Earth.
Oh, wow.
This is during the remote viewing era, and, oh, my God, I've got to report this to my CIA contract monitor. Do I want to tell him that? And so I did, and one of the places he came up with some, but one of the places he came up with was Mount Zeal in Australia. And so my CIA contract monitor says, well, I know the station keeper, CIA station keeper out in Australia. I think I'll call him, and I won't tell him why I'm asking, but I'll ask him about Mount Zeal area. So he gave him a call, and he said, I'd like to ask you about that Mount Zeal area. He said, oh, you mean where the UFOs are always flying around?
Womp, womp.
Whoa.
So I thought, oh, gee, So this was from Pat Price. I take him seriously. Let me give you an anecdote. I mean, I know it's hard to believe that some of this stuff could possibly be real, but here was a real game changer for me. One day, Pat Price, during the remote viewing program, came in the office and he said, I got bored last night, so I started looking around, and I decided to look at the Oval Office.
Uh-oh.
And as I kind of did my way around the Oval Office, I realized there's something in the Oval Office that will harm him, and he will not get through his second term.
Him being Nixon.
And I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, but I have to report that to the CIA contract manager, which I did. And so they sent a team over looking for, hidden microwaves, hidden toxic substances, and when they didn't come up with anything, of course, as we now know from history, it was the tape recorder that did him in. And he couldn't make it through his second term because
So this was during the Nixon administration?
Yeah, Nixon administration.
Wow.
That is absolutely wild. Thank you, Hal. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting your information out. Thank you for being a good dude and taking on the stuff that's difficult that no one wants to talk about. So, thanks, Hal, and hope you enjoy that. And if you like that, you might want to watch the rest of the interview. Forget about who's interviewing him. Don't worry about that. Just look at Hal and learn what he has to say. It's some very, very, very interesting stuff. I think Joe has a lot of really amazing guests, and I don't like all of them. I don't agree with all of them, but I like this one, and I think you will too. It's number 2314, and it's Hal Puthoff, HalPuthoff. Thank you very much, and see you on the next turn around. Bye.